Hey there, listener. Welcome to the Deep Share Podcast. I'm your host, Andy Rouse, and for the last couple of decades, I've slowly been opening my eyes to a very different world than the one I grew up hearing about. And the more conversations I have with interesting people, the more mystifying this world becomes. So without further ado, let's get deep.
We've got science to celebrate! Demons bliss out! After what, Pippi? Come on!
There is rebellion in the wind. It will be crushed.
Everything I've said is true. It's real.
Dinosaur fossils? God put those here to test our faith.
That damn lie. I saw them on my own eye.
Did IQs just drop sharply while I was away?
We did illusions, man. None of it is true.
I'm not insane! This is mass madness, you maniacs! In God's name, you people are the real thing! We are the illusion!
All right, welcome back to the Deep Share. Tonight, I am very excited to speak to my guest. We've been waiting to talk, and we had to reschedule a few times, and everything brought us to this moment. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Lesley Mitchell-Clarke. Lesley, how you doing?
Oh, I'm great. And Andy, thank you so much for your patience with our elaborate tango of quantum entanglement. Yeah, we had a tough time getting together, but you know, as we mentioned earlier to each other, there is no such thing as a misplaced event. You know, I think things fall into place when they should. And I don't know, I'm awake, I'm here, I'm alive. I woke up this morning, opened the paper, I was not in the obituary, so it's like a good day.
That's great to hear. I mean, it's always a good day when you can see yourself in the mirror. And right. So I have wanted to talk to you for a number of different reasons, and mainly because of the work you do, but also just your absolutely fascinating past. And so I would love to give my audience just a little peek into the life you've lived so far, because it's incredible to me as a music lover and a lover of show business and everything. So please enlighten us, Lesley. How did you start? How did it all start?
Well, yeah, I'm from what you would call probably a show business family, and I was a child actor. I worked in theater in Los Angeles with Melanie Griffith and other would-be actors. My late dad, who was known mostly professionally as Whitey Mitchell and later as Gordon Mitchell, was a multiple Emmy Award winning comedy writer and producer. And he worked with Norman Lear for many years and produced All in the Family, Good Times. I believe he's created The Jeffersons. He created Mork and Mindy for Robin Williams. Of course, Happy Days was in there, and MASH and Mary Tyler Moore. So my dad was big in the 80s, 70s and 80s. But in my own life, I worked as an actor, singer, dancer in a lot of milieus. Also in my early show business career, I had two great jobs. One of them is I was a tour guide at Universal Studios in its heyday, you know, around the time that we made Jaws and all that. It was, and later I was at NBC Page, and I worked on the old, you know, Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. So I'm actually I've written another book, but I'm working on a book now that has nothing to do with anything metaphysical particularly. It's just about my showbiz remembrances, and I'm calling it Woman on the Road. And it's just a bunch of, some of the stories are funny, some are perplexing, and some are disgusting.
That's awesome. I can't wait to read it. That's going to be great.
Okay.
Like, okay, all right, okay. Now after reading this, I understand her other books.
That's right. They'll give insight to everything else.
So that being said, let's get into some of your other work and some of the books you've written, and let's give the audience an overall feel of what your what your puzzle piece is in this big,
Ah,
beautiful truth movement that we have going for so long.
oh, fantastic. Well, I am at this point, I am a board certified clinical master hypnotherapist and regressionist. And what that means is not only do I do what you would call very mainstream hypnosis, where I help people with what you would consider maybe predictable issues, quitting smoking, weight loss, phobias, insomnia, thumb sucking, nail biting, hair pulling, you name it. So there's all of that part of me, which is very therapeutic. And then my specialty is really as a regressionist. And since pretty early in my hypnotherapy career, I became certified in metaphysical hypnosis, including past life regression and interlife regression. So I worked in those modalities for, I'd say, 4 or 5 years before I ever really encountered someone who believed that they had had an experience of high strangeness, perhaps with an extraterrestrial being or beings. And at the time, I was working in a I was working in a clinic, and maybe about once a month, some dear soul would call in and say, you know, I've been having these experiences. I got missing time, blah blah blah, and none of my colleagues wanted to deal with it, like, at all. They said, no, no, no way. And I said, yes. So I began working with these wonderful individuals. And, you know, one thing that I can absolutely tell you with great confidence is the experience of extraterrestrial contact or contacts is something that crosses all lines of race and creed and color and financial levels. All of that happens to all kinds of people. I have some college professors, judges, social workers, and I also have people that are, you know, construction workers and working in no less important a job, but perhaps not really a job that had required, you know, a lot of scholastic training, shall we say. I'm trying to dance around this. I don't want to put anyone down for what they do, but I'm just saying there is a wide spectrum of types of people who are having and have had these experiences. So it's almost like once I opened the door to this type of work, a lot of people began contacting me, and what I did is I adapted past life regression techniques that had been taught to me by Dr. Georgina Cannon, my mentor, wonderful woman. Anyway, I didn't reinvent the wheel. I'm openly saying, you know, I adapted her techniques to work with experiencers. Now I've tweaked and fussed around and hopefully developed ways of working with these wonderful people that allows them to access repressed memories, process uncomfortable memories, perhaps, and integrate all of this into their, you know, third density, real-time life, if you will. I mean, I'm not at all. I believe we're living interdimensionally all the time. And
Yeah.
I really do. And many people, this is kind of interesting, Andy, because many people who have had regular contact with extraterrestrials, the contacts in their early life and up through their 30s tend to be quite physical. In other words, they're taken on board, they're having some exams, maybe they're, you know, donating some sperm or ova. I mean, who knows, you know, that kind of thing goes on. But what seems to happen as the individuals develop and begin and collaborate with the ETs is that the experiences they have tend to be etheric, past midlife. And by that, I mean, they are more akin to astral projection, or even, if you will, some type of sophisticated, like psionic remote viewing, perhaps, but some type of consciousness projection that I believe they are taught. And these type of experiences seem to dominate what happens in the progress of a typical lifelong experiencer and what they go through throughout the course of their life.
Now, would you say the experiences, the physical spectrum towards the more metaphysical spectrum, it always happens kind of on the later side? Or would you say there's also some cases where the young children are having the very mental experience?
Absolutely. I mean, my feeling is, and you know, I'm not the world's foremost authority, but if I was asked what is the commonality here, what are these advanced species, and why are they engaging with some individuals and not others? I really believe it's all about psychic ability. It's all about the ability to not only communicate telepathically, but to do things like have etheric experiences. And certainly, I think people who are maybe experimenting with DMT and some of these other amazing substances can project themselves into a vibrational state where they can travel in that way and engage with other advanced beings. I mean, I know that happens. So there are various ways, various paths. But I do think that many advanced species, well, first of all, I think we're all hybrids. We are hybrids. We have, it's like the 5 fingers of man. We have been seeded either through advanced civilizations that came here or panspermia. I don't care how it happened. It happened. We have special DNA. We are apart from the indigenous life forms of this planet. In fact, I read an interesting factoid the other day, or maybe it was on Jeopardy. I don't know. Something got into my being right there. Yeah. But Homo sapiens sapiens, human beings, we are susceptible to over 6,000 possible genetic problems. Now, nowhere else in the kingdom of nature do we see anything like that. What we do see occasionally are environmental pollutants causing, genetic problems in animals, but they themselves don't have that capability. Our DNA has been engineered or tampered with or something. So we are susceptible. And I think part of what might be going on is, in fact, our deep ancestors trying to help us to get over this bump that we're going through, this need for our consciousness to rise, and yet the extreme polarity of consciousnesses that are on this planet. I mean, it's a real push me, pull you right now. But I do think that on the side of enlightenment, I think we are slightly over the middle bar. So I know that there are shifts that are occurring. And, Andy, it's people like you. And I mean, and disclosure. Well, yeah, but I mean, the discussion and the media presence of arcane subject matter is not happening primarily through major networks. This is a grassroots. Disclosure is a grassroots kind of a movement. It really is. And as I always say, we're the midwives of disclosure.
And that's another big area that I definitely wanted to talk to you about, because I'll say this, to give you a little background on my interest in the UFO community and all that. I mean, it's not a unique story, because I was just a kid from the 80s and 90s obsessed with sci-fi. and loved aliens and all of it, you know. And now, regardless of how you might feel about other areas of what's going on in the world right now, from my perspective, I'm kind of seeing an age or ancient old machine at work in society that's seemingly bringing us towards friggin' Terminator of some kind. And we have over here the UFO community, at least like in the very mainstream aspect. Like we literally have hashtag UFO Twitter, like that area. It worries me a lot. It disheartens me a lot the past couple of years. And I don't say that lightly, because I feel deeply part of this community. And I see a lot of people buying into kind of, I don't know how to say it other than they're buying into some pretty psychopathic, untrustworthy people, you know, or at least from my perspective.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, there's a lot of
and the factions,
and the factions. There's a lot of fear-based propaganda out there. And I'm telling you, fear is the killer. The fear is coming from us. Fear is not being projected at us. There's nothing going on now that wasn't going on 1,000 years ago. We are simply awakening in our awareness. And now, you know, I don't like to, you know, name names, but there are some ufologists who I feel are really pandering in fear and talking about conspiracies and the Illuminati and blah 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 blah. I don't think anybody has enough power to control everything. I think things are fairly out of control right now, because especially in the United States, we are, and I don't want to offend anyone, but we are, and this is true all over the world. I won't single out the US, but we're dealing with people who are unstable and angry and armed. So, you know, there's, and we don't need any trouble, you know, effing things up with each other. We're perfectly capable of doing that on our own. And I think this is the whole problem with why full disclosure has not occurred, because we keep being given opportunities and opportunities and opportunities, and we just don't learn. It's, you know, the greed factor, you know, how did we ever let this massive military industrial complex, you know, form in the 50s that siphoned off trillions of dollars and created a secret space program. So, you know, and then we have our fake NASA program.
Well, see, that to me is, I mean, you can exchange secret space program with Illuminati. I mean, to me, it's the hidden hand is all I kind of meant. And it feels like, and we don't have to name names, but we have factions who are saying they're a threat. And then we have the factions on the other side saying that's not true. That's all fear. And to me, that looks like divide and conquer. And that's kind of what worries me the most. And I'm just curious. I mean, I know that you're involved at high levels with a lot of big names in this industry. I don't want to offend anybody, and I don't want to step on any toes. I just want to know what you think about that concept, because it does seem to be the favorite tool of this military industrial complex.
Well, there's a lot of pandering and a lot of individuals who are setting themselves up almost as demigods in this realm. But you know, Andy, the one thing I can tell you and tell your listeners and tell them with all my heart is that upwards of like 95% of the experiences that people have had and are having who come to me are positive and enlightening and mind-opening. However, I think sometimes what we call abduction experiences are misinterpreted. I believe that we make agreements to work together with certain beings that we're either genetically connected to or emotionally connected to. Many of us, as we were discussing briefly, I think many people who are experiences are living sort of interdimensional lives where they are living a linear physical life in the third density, and yet when their body's in the delta state, they're traveling and doing and engaging and working and doing all kinds of other things. I mean, this is what I'm hearing, and this is from reasonable people. And I suppose some of your peeps, and it's good to be skeptical. Some peeps listening are going to say, well, how do you know that these people aren't lying or confabulating, or and are you, me, Lesley, leading them in a certain direction? Well, I can only tell you that in my role in the regression, I have to be like vanilla ice cream. I mean, I can't infer. I can ask questions, but I have to be careful how I ask them. So the whole, I'm not going to call it an art, but I would say
it's part of your training,
Yeah, the discipline of working in regression is you can't pollute or lead or any. Of course, I record everything, so it's right there. People can hear what they said and what I said. So that's a very important part of the protocol, is that I do not lead them. Now, I believe that as far as talking about regression in contemporary times, and this is the time of the real-time mapping of the brain, we now have medical evidence that when individuals are being regressed by a professional person who can do that, that the areas of the brain that are firing are not the creative centers, or maybe some other language centers, some other centers of the brain that you would expect to see firing if there was confabulation going on. What is firing are the deep memory centers of the brain and part of the primitive brain, the amygdala. So we know that memory and deep memory can be accessed through the hypnotic process. Yeah. And we know that. Now, could somebody fool me? Yes. I mean, I think it would be, I think it's happened maybe twice in a long career, but it's possible. But again, before anybody ever works with me, I have a long conversation with them. I do a long intake, and certainly not everybody who contacts me is mentally stable.
Right, of course. I understand. And I want to clarify that my comments earlier were mainly in the realm of more of the nuts and bolts kind of stuff anyway. Yeah. I was kind of going away from that, because honestly, the work that you do, I respect so much, because like I said, I've had experiences like this, and I know many, many, many people who have, and I feel like that this is where the bread and butter is. Like, this is what we need to focus on. And I think there's distractions out there kind of trying to get us to play with our toys and watch the cool spacecrafts and everything.
Yeah.
But this seems to be where the real content is and where the real meaning seems to come from, right?
I think so. And this is what people like Grant Cameron are talking about, that the real disclosure is in the experiencers relating their stories. And I'm very blessed in that some years ago, Kathy Martin invited me to become a member of the MUFON Experiencer Research Project. So many people that I work with as far as regression are referred to me by MUFON as part of their research. So they've already been scrutinized and sanitized and martinized by the time they get to me. So I don't have to worry too much about that. But if somebody contacts me just, from having seen me on this, that, or the other, then I have to really take my time. Now, if someone presents to me and I know that I have a strong feeling that they are having some dissociative situation, or I don't just let these poor people twist in the wind. I have colleagues who are psychiatrists and psychotherapists and psychologists who are also open to the abduction phenomena. And I will refer these people on to someone who can help them more completely. And if medication is required, that's because that's not something that I can do. So
well, that's great that you have that ability to you have that community around you to help people outside of your direct field like that. Because honestly,
yeah.
I've thought about therapy a number of times over the years, just for this or that, to, deal with issues of life. And I always tell myself, like, or not tell myself, I tell my wife too, like, it's very hard to find a professional just out of the phone book. Well, that doesn't exist anymore, but online or whatever.
Yeah.
In my local area that is very comfortable with psychedelics and all these alternative ideas. It's difficult, but I think it's getting easier. It seems, obviously.
Oh yes, much easier. And also, now, and I always did treat individuals online. Not a whole lot, but I always did, because I would have people all over the world. But one wonderful thing about now making therapy more available on Zoom is we can reach a lot more people easily, people who live maybe in remote areas where they don't have a great variety of therapists who are open to more esoteric subject matter. It's possible to work with anybody anywhere as long as they're online. So that, and it does work. It does work. So that's I'm very grateful for that, because what my objective is not only to out of curiosity to explore what has happened to these unique individuals who come to me, but it's really about their healing. And that is the main objective. Is and sometimes people have memory blocks. They have big chunks of time they can't remember. Sometimes they'll say, I can't remember anything before 5. I mean, it's my belief also that no memory block can last forever. I think, especially the ones put in place by the secret space program, they only last for 20 years, which is why so many of these guys like Corey Good and Captain Randy Kramer and Jason Rice, many of these guys are recovering their memories around now because they were only suppressed for 20 years. That was as far as they went with the secret space program memory block for the guys that did the what we call the 20 and back.
Right.
Yeah. So, and again, it sounds, I know, Andy, the whole idea of the secret space program, it sounds like a bad Republic picture. I know that, but if I hadn't have heard about this in detail from so many people who have that, and they come out of trance and they say, what the hell was that? These are not people who come in with a preconceived ideas. In fact, mostly they can't remember much.
Right. So, these are people most of the time that don't want to be involved with these kinds of topics, even sometimes.
Gosh,
I mean, I was a baseball playing, metal listening, like I just wasn't interested in anything. And then I did mushrooms and suddenly I was a theology obsessed, a psychology, theology, quantum. I couldn't handle it because I needed to figure out what the hell was going on. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Well, you had an awakening, a door opened, you had a big DMT release that sped up your whole vibrational being. And so you were able to peep into those higher realms rather quickly. Now, that can be done also through meditation. I've been a meditator for 40 years. And although I don't explore hallucinogenics anymore, I can really travel, just from a discipline. But
That's
awesome. Of course it's not fast, like it's not going to be the intense fast kind of thing that you get when you're using a little help. So that's
I used to always say when I was younger, why climb the mountain when you can take the jetpack? But man, has my perspective gone 180. Now I'm like, oh man, but throughout all the trails on the way to the summit, you learn so much.
I know. Well, I do think that, I do think that many of the evolved beings that individuals encounter are functioning at such a high vibrational level that they can pass easily into what we call the afterlife. I mean, it's not the afterlife, it's just another vibrational state. We're still creating matter. It's just light matter. And I have in working in interlife regressions, which is really pretty fascinating. I'm not sure if you know what that is.
I was going to ask you about it.
It's a discipline that was created by the late Michael Newton, and it is an exploration of what happens, where we are, where we go, what we do in that space that you might call heaven, that place where we are before we come into physical life, in between physical lifetimes, if you will, in between incarnations, we're home. And Michael Newton discovered through doing these specific types of regressions that there are many commonalities that we all experience when we leave our physical body, and one of them that everybody goes through is coming in front of their council, if you will. Now, this is not disciplinary; it's a council of love and help, and you talk about what you'd like to accomplish in your coming life. Now, what I started hearing about, I would ask people to describe, like, the members of their council, what they looked like. And they'd say, oh, there's a woman that looks, she looks like an elven queen. She's got a thing on. And there's a guy with an elongated skull. And I'm going, really? And this is in our so-called, humanoid heaven. Well, I think the reality is that we are in a spirit group, if you will, with many, many, many different beings who, are in a ballpark sense kind of like us, 2 arms, 2 legs, bipedal. And in fact, people do talk about incarnations on other planets as other beings that are, they'll say, well, I'm very tall and slender, and I have so that's something that I have heard many, many times in both past life regressions and interlife regressions, that our illusion of separateness is just that. It's an illusion. It's the same on planet Earth. We have an illusion of separateness from our fellow man, which is what has caused all the problem. Oh, they're different. They're not like us. So, they're different over there too. They look different over there. And it's all, that's all illusion.
Yeah. It's that word they.
Yeah.
There is no they, that's what I try to say, even though I get really negative and caught up in it, and I'm fighting they too. And I got to come back around and recenter, and remember it's all us. And, like Ram Dass used to say, try to look at everyone as God in drag,
Yeah.
I always loved that line. I thought it was so beautiful.
That's brilliant. That
and
is,
like
that
used
is.
to called it home, and he used to say, we're always walking each other home. And it's such like, I really like that. I've never heard of interlife.
And well, this is the cruel school. We are all here. We are all here for a couple of, we're here to help humanity move to a higher vibrational level. That's why we have all incarnated here at this time. But it is a slog, man, for aware people. Sometimes it feels like you're just walking through a big, swamp. It can be a slog, because sometimes we find the vibrations to be very dense and low, especially if I go to Los Angeles.
And dude, oh my God, you just blew my mind, because it's like that on every level too.
The IQ points are flying off as we're descending through the smog belt. I mean, seriously.
Well, seriously, it works on every level of metaphor, because you're literally trudging through deep snow
Slogging.
versus running across the ridge line of a mountain. You know, it's
slogging. And there are some places that are so rarefied on planet Earth that I think we have natural vortices all over the Earth which make interdimensional travel possible. I think that's a reality. Ley lines. And I think it has to do with, even Einstein's, gravity is part of space-time. And we don't even fully understand gravity, but we do know that there are tremendous variations in the gravitational force around the world. I mean, there are places in the world where the gravitational force is like a skinny little, Melba toast, right? I mean, it's hardly, so it makes sense that at those points, the fabric of space-time may be easily traversable. And I think, the ancients knew this. And if there are places like Pumapuca and Baalbek and many of these super ancient ruins that are more than 60,000 years old, and they all have spaces where the locals say, oh, that's where the gods came out, or that's where the doorway was. So I think that's technology that is in use by not only our own military operatives, but by benevolent ETs too. Captain Randy Kramer told me, and I like to believe this, and I do hope it's true, but he told me that considering the level of the bases that we have throughout our solar system, we pretty much control who comes into our solar system. And
whoa, I didn't think about the secret space program at that level. I really didn't.
No, that's what he said. And it's multinational. He says there isn't a country on the globe that isn't involved in some level.
Do you think that the rollout during the Trump administration of Space Force was kind of like the soft release of something that had just been going on for a long time, and that maybe like a decade from now or less, are they normalizing the secret space program? Maybe no,
I don't think so.
They like to normalize all their evil shit. Oh, here I go saying they again.
They do, but as far as Trump, I don't think there was a soft rollout. I think there was a soft frontal lobe going on there. But I think he just got scared because I think he may have learned some information, and so he wanted his little ray gun. He wanted his little space force. I mean, it's ludicrous, really, right? Ludicrous. Something we have had since the 1950s.
Right. Okay. Because the only reason why I asked is because of that, how they almost like anticipation of us discovering stuff, they'll have like a straw man in place of some, you know what I mean? That's the only reason why I went there. But back to the regression, the inner life stuff, because this is so, okay, I'm going to try to word this the best I can. And this is all coming out of my head.
Good.
From my shaky understanding from multiple disciplines, multiple cultures, ancient writings, and this and that, and Eastern mysticism as well, and maybe a little quantum physics action. It seems to, from my perspective, I just want to see what your thoughts are on this concept.
Tell me.
It seems like it's described in a way that seems like the physical existence, time and space is this, and that outside of this, it's really no experience to be had. It's almost like, so when I had my spiritual moment, my breakthrough in psychedelics, it was stillness and silence, and I kind of felt like in that moment that makes sense because it's the only thing that's pure and perfect. It was just like an observation, you
were experiencing that sensation of timelessness because there is no time.
Right.
There is no linear time. Linear time is an agreement that we have made in the third density so we can get our shit done, so we
Okay.
so we can meet
So
up on time. And
that's what I'm saying though. Like, how can we get our shit done in a place that doesn't have these qualities? That's why, like, I've always understood like the Demiurge in Gnosticism is like, I used to describe it as like the actionable arm of God, whereas the true form of the source or God or whatever, there is no experience there almost. Maybe I'm just talking way out to lunch here though.
No, but I think that we are the experience part of God.
Yes, I do too.
We are the creative manifestation of the creative force of the universe. And that creativity has manifested many beings all over the place, but we're all part of one whole, one creative burst, if you will. So, I think that sometimes it's almost overwhelming, and almost you get a feeling of like being dangled over the Grand Canyon to just think about the vastness of creation and the fact that we are, but everyone is a child of God and a precious spirit, and we're all, anything that lives is coming from that creative source. Now, sometime this is kind of would be a whole nother show, but the nature of good and evil. If there is a benevolent creative God force, why was there Hitler? Why are there sociopaths? Why are we so imperfect? Where do these dark, violent behaviors come from? And are there demonic forces? Are there negative entities that attach themselves? And this is an area I don't always, I'm pretty upbeat person, and I don't even like to think about those things. But the fact remains that I think that there are elementals. I think that there are different layers of beings on the earth. In other words, I think it's very probable that there's a kind of an elemental, fairy kingdom. It's just they're in light matter, but they are also drawn to the earth. And it may even be possible that Bigfoot or the Yeti is some part of that, not totally corporeal, elven type realm. I think who knows, they seem to disappear like that. And there have been people who have seen, none of my clients that I can recall, but there have been witnesses who have seen Bigfoot creatures, arrive down in a beam from a craft.
And they're often seen with orbs. That's a very, very common indicator of Bigfoot.
Yes, I know. They must be something. They're not an animal. They're something else, and they have
their shamans running around.
Yeah, a bunch of shamans out there with the bad haircuts.
Yeah, they never adapted the society. They were like, "No, you guys
no
are
electrolysis, no electrolysis or waxing going on out there."
No,
that's for sure.
So,
but there was. Oh, I'm sorry. Go right ahead.
You go ahead. No, you go ahead.
I was just thinking, speaking of I was just thinking of, there's a wonderful gentleman, Mike. Oh, golly, forgive my brain.
People have to forgive mine all the time.
Oh my God. But he's a leading, he has an organization called Sasquatch Ontario. So you can always find him. It's Mike. And he has a very close relationship with a family of big feet that he has known for many years, and they can talk. He has vocalizations. If you go onto his website, there's a lot of stuff on there, and it's very, very compelling. It really is. And they communicate with him because they trust him.
That is intense.
Yeah,
I'm looking him up right now. Yeah, he's on YouTube and everything.
He's on YouTube and everything. Sasquatch Ontario.
I'm trying to find his name just so we can give him a little shout out.
Mike.
Mike Patterson? No,
that's Mike Patterson.
Really Mike? Okay,
Mike Patterson. Patterson.
Okay, isn't that a famous name in the Bigfoot community? Patterson? Is that is
well,
he in
you know,
relation to
he's
Patterson?
not, but it's so coincidental that you know the Patterson blank, you know, footage that
happens
iconic
often.
footage.
Isn't that
weird? That's the first thing I asked him. No relation. It's just one of those quantum entanglement things.
Yeah.
But Mike is a great guy, and I've got to tell you, I completely believe him. I completely believe him. He's not, and he's been through some crapola, man. He's had a lot of trespassers on his property, and he's been through legal stuff with just people trying to harass him. And for what? He's not getting, believe me, he's not getting rich. He's not, there's no huge Mike Patterson empire from the information that he is lovingly sharing, because these beings, these Sasquatch beings, have encouraged him to share this information.
Wow.
They want us, apparently, as Homo sapiens sapiens, to acknowledge them and somehow live on the earth together with them, because they say they've always been here, that they've been here longer than we have.
You know, that was something I wanted to ask you, taking a turn back towards just talking about aliens. I've heard you say before you feel like they've always been here, or they've been here longer than us, or no, I've heard you say they were already here. They've already been here.
Yeah.
So do you think it's because they've literally always been here, because we're living in that multi-dimensional kind of situation where there was no invasion at any point, like coming to the planet? Maybe we've always just been in this space together somehow.
I think that there is that. I do, but I also think that many of us are direct descendants of the Anunnaki, and they were they came from a planet in our solar system that has a huge elliptical orbit. And Zachariah Sitchin, who is now passed, was the foremost translator of the Sumerian cylinder scrolls, which describe in detail everything that went on with these gods. Well, they were not gods. They were extremely long-lived. They were very tall, and they needed gold to repair their atmosphere, which is ironic because that is a thing that will repair atmospheres. It's true. So they found us, a planet beyond what they called the hammered bracelet, which would be the Milky Way. They found us in their scannings and knew that there was a lot of gold here. So the first place that got sort of developed was like South Africa. And there you've got Michael Tellinger down there, who has discovered those ancient gold mines, the ground zero of the Anunnaki.
The work he's done. Oh my God. He's uncovered so much over the years.
That guy is amazing. That guy's amazing. And so, you know, so it's I'm really sort of a follower of the ancient Anunnaki. Now, it's possible that these same beings showed up in other civilizations around the same time, in Mexico, in perhaps the Norse being, always sounds like they're talking, they're always talking about the same beings. And I don't think they're just anthropomorphic beings. I think people are actually much more truthful than we ever give them credit for.
It's very hard to discredit what the Hopi or the Dogon people have to say.
No kidding.
How do you mess with that? Like they knew star system, they knew star locations, and even the existence of stars that we didn't see until the 70s. So I don't know. Maybe no light pollution. Sure, I don't know how far that theory can go.
Oh man, that's a swamp gas. One of those swamp gas.
Well,
things.
no, I know. I mean, like maybe a long time ago we had better views of the stars, but
Oh,
I don't know if that would account for what
no,
they were
no,
able
no,
to
no, no,
do.
no, no. They were talking. You're talking about Sirius too.
Yes, yeah, the
That
sisters,
cannot be seen with the naked eye or any kind of
right?
technology that
Even
that
without
those
light
people had.
pollution. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So there are interventions, and we have, we have diverse racial peoples all over the world. So you might think, wow, some beings may have looked more Asiatic. The Lemurians were the Lemurian civilization allegedly was involved in the Pacific area, and Hawaii and Samoa. Those places are the leftover tips, Indonesia, of the Lemurian civilization. So we've had different influences, but there are some very weird things about our genetics. I mean, O negative blood, for instance, Rh
Yeah.
negative blood. There's no other being on the planet that where some of them are born without the Rh factor. All
That's weird.
animals have that. It's just some of us. I'm O negative, and there are a lot of high concentrations of O negative people in Ireland, the Celtic people. It's not uncommon. And also, um, oh my goodness, they're part of Spain, the Basque people.
Okay.
Something like upwards of 80% of all the Basque people have O negative blood. So we have to wonder about these things. We have to wonder why now they have been doing genetic testing on the Egyptian mummies of the Old Kingdom, and this has been pretty well hushed up. They don't like this, but it turns out that the ancient mummies were not Egyptian; they were early Indo-Europeans.
I have a theory that would suggest that they're definitely like Nordic of some kind, possibly.
Yeah, I think it's possible they were Hyperboreans.
Yeah,
I mean, I do, and of course, that guy, Dr. Zawas, who's in charge of the antiquities, as soon as there's a whiff of anti-Egyptianism, he the whole thing gets shut down, and there's a big press blanket. But no, they have definitely determined that,
red hair.
Red hair, super tall, all that kind of stuff. So
that's a weird situation to wonder about, like, why is it being skewed the way it's being skewed, and
ignorance, fear, power, and it's all,
all of the above, right?
Ignorance, fear, power. Also in Egypt, I believe that the Hall of Records has actually been discovered and was actually located some years ago. I believe there is a massive labyrinth underneath the Sphinx and between the Great Pyramid, and it was reported by Herodotus. He saw it. So Dr. Zawas, there was a picture of him skittering into a little hole in the side of the Sphinx, and then that was the last we heard about anything. So,
and then he came out and said, "Oh, it was nothing."
Yeah, nothing there. Nothing.
So we closed it up forever.
Yeah,
What's interesting about the Anunnaki? I mean, we have kind of like two themes going tonight, where we're talking about these physical beings, we're talking about the mental aspect, the cognitive aspect of this. And a weird assimilation is written right into those translations from Sitchin, and not only Sitchin, but others. Like, this isn't part of the Sumerian tale that's like, oh no, Sitchin was just biased. This is stuff that's just written and accepted, that the Anunnaki could be physical, but weren't always physical. That they almost, there's some descriptions of them being sort of like light beings. I think it had to do with the verses where the work was too hard for them. That's why they needed the Gigi and then us or whatever.
They couldn't do it. They couldn't. They couldn't do it. But they are sometimes described as beings of light. But again, we're probably talking about. I believe that their blood system was not iron based.
Right.
It was copper based. So they may have appeared to even be bluish or gray, but they were very fair with piercing blue eyes and very tall. They were godlike, and they allowed themselves to be perceived as gods. I mean, it's and you know, as the story goes, according to Sitchin's translations, again, you said this, they had to get some labor going. They weren't, it wasn't moving fast enough. And so, you know, Enki found a kind of a loophole, because apparently, you know, slavery as such had long been outlawed on Nibiru. And they were very queasy about, you know, his sort of island of Dr. Moreau kind of project. They weren't, you know, digging it. But he said, you know, look, I'm just speeding up what was going to happen anyway. That's how we evolved. It's just, you know, going to take them longer. We don't have time. I'm just going to speed it up. So that was how he got permission to, and actually the creation of, you know, what they call the Adama, you know, it took an awful long time, and finally didn't work until they added their own DNA.
Right.
I mean, they couldn't reproduce. The beings that they upgraded could not reproduce for some reason until the Anunnaki. Right? Yeah.
Do you remember in the text what happened to the Gigi? I know they rebelled supposedly.
Oh, well, there was a big hubbub, and what happened is the Gigi were pretty much stuck on Mars, which was even more bleak than being stuck in South Africa in the mines down there, because the Gigi could fly. They were actually pilots. They were like enlisted men, right? So the Gigi were always, you know, rioting and refusing and hated the conditions. And there was a big event where Anu, you know, the king of Nibiru, was going to come and visit planet Earth and see what was going on. So he arrives, and so they said, okay, all you Gigi come in and, you know, set up a nice military line so Anu can see you and blah blah blah. Well, the Gigi came in all right, but they rioted, and they grabbed a bunch of Earth women as wives.
Is that the Nephilim story?
Yeah, well, that's the beginning of it, you know, the real hybridization. It was impossible for those guys from Nibiru to keep it in their pants or their togas or whatever they had going. I mean,
oh my God, Lesley, you just blew my mind open about that 80s movie with Jeff Goldblum, Earth Girls Are Easy. Like, is that about the Anunnaki? And they were blue. Holy crap.
They were blue. Oh, Gina God, Davis. I remember that. Yes.
My wife and I just watched that like 3 months ago.
Oh,
don't ask me why. It was terrible.
Well,
it didn't age well at all.
It didn't age well, and neither did Jeff Goldblum, but there you have it.
I would beg to differ.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Lesley, this is a lot of fun. We should do this more often.
I am at your service, but I want to you know, thank everybody who's just tuning in and opening their minds. And you know, there's a lot of humor in all of this. I think we have to stop being so serious.
Yeah.
I think we have to laugh at George Norrie's toupee. I think we have to not be so serious. I think we have to just relax and
usually laughing at his questions.
I know, but now the show's like 15 minutes long, so
Hey, George is getting old too. We got like people have to cut George a little friggin' slack. He's like the butt of a lot of jokes, and that's not fair. Because
he's a great guy.
Love him or hate him, but he's been in the business for a long time. He seems like a nice.
He has, and I like his. You know, I like his show on Gaia, where he gets to sit down with people and actually talk to them, and he's not interrupted by, you know, the commercial stuff he has to do on the station, I guess. But no, I don't. I think that, and I think that we need to remember that we are all here at this time for a reason, and we're all being called to do our thing. And we are going to see incredible things in the next 20 years, and sooner than that. But disclosure is inevitable. And remember, I don't know if you ever interviewed Paul Hellyer, very sweet man. He
No,
was,
I never got the
yeah,
chance.
oh, bless his heart.
Rest in peace.
He was, rest in peace, Paul. He was a lovely man, and he was the Minister of Defense for Canada for some time. He was also Vice Premier of Ontario. He was a big time politico and a whistleblower. And he told me not long before he died, one of his last appearances, that to his knowledge, the Canadian government had formal diplomatic relations with over 80 different species of beings. And the Canadians and the Americans were in bed together, so that's a shared thing. We share bases along the dew line. That's got to be true also of the U.S. government, and it's probably much more than that. So
I can imagine,
we are, and I do think that there is like a Gene Roddenberry Federation of Planets, and where like-minded species are cooperating together to help the planets that are shuffling along like us. And the big message that all of these experiencers keep getting, the messages that they keep getting, that Betty and Barney Hill got, these messages are about: heal the planet is alive, fix your environment, and clean up your mess.
Yeah, don't bring that shit into space.
Yeah, don't bring that shit into space. Why do you think they're monitoring us so they can turn off the nukes if some maniac, either activates them, or a kind of a disturbing thought is in the U.S. all of those old missile silos throughout the Midwest, throughout the American Midwest, they're all in decrepitude. So this is almost, this is like a real serious consideration.
Yeah, for sure.
Something could happen inadvertently, but I'm convinced that we're being completely monitored, and because that would be nuclear. I think maybe the power of the atom, like in Star Trek, they can't engage with a species and have first contact unless they have knowledge of warp drive. That's like the distinguishing thing. I think maybe in reality, it's more like understanding the atom. Once that happens, that then a species has to be kind of schooled through difficult growing pains.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way to put it, because so what I heard you say in my head was kind of becoming aware of how fractal everything really is, and how enormously terrifying that is at first. How it's almost like reality is kind of like endlessly copying itself over and over again in some sort of way. And where we've been talking about such dense, low vibratory matter all the way up to this kind of light spectrum. And I love the concept of as above, so below. And I think what you've kind of shown me tonight is that, and it kind of solidified something I've been kind of hoping for, is that it's not just as above and as below, it's many, 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 many levels and layers between them.
Yes. Oh, yes. Like an onion. Yeah. And it's really, and I believe that the key to moving through these dimensions is controlling our release of DMT. I think the third eye is our passe-partout. I think it's our key to interdimensional travel, and I think we can release it when we meditate. Obviously there's a release if you're using any kind of mushroom or whatever, but it's we are capable of being anything and taking our position as benevolent teachers in the universe to spread the message of oneness. And I know that sounds very airy-fairy, but these are the messages that I'm hearing, and these are how evolved people function. Evolved people do not war amongst themselves.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, hey, isn't it so sad that we've kind of all been conditioned that the airy-fairy stuff is stupid? You
I
know,
know. I
that's kind
know.
of, now granted, Guy is famous again, and I could say a lot about all kinds of stuff in the new age that, some of it seems co-opted, but a lot of it's
Mhm,
pure, a lot of it's great.
mhm.
It's a lot of it is not new age, it's ancient age, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so it's
Uh,
a beautiful thing at its core, and I think we need to remember that, right? We got to remember people
yes.
that whatever's being mimicked or mocked or trying to take your attention away, it's the real thing is not far off, because that's how they mimic things. They kind of
Yes.
have to make it look. So
Mhm,
that's, I'm coming full circle with this. Of course they're faking UFOs because there's real UFOs.
mhm.
That makes sense to me now.
Well, yeah, and I think that also we're seeing holographic projections too.
Blue beam stuff,
We're
right?
not really all the time, we're not seeing literal ships.
Mm,
I believe that some beings, they can form matter and cloak it, and maybe some of these little craft that we see are really more like drones, psychic drones in a way.
mm,
So, and I think we also are seeing our own stuff, like the big triangle, the TR3W.
yeah.
That's a transport ship. That's a military transport ship. That's how they bring the service people out to moon base, Mars, and moon base moon, or whatever it is, lunar base one, or whatever they call it. So I don't
Yeah.
know, but we are all here for a reason, and people's minds are opening. I know even on mainstream broadcasting, there are channels that have nothing but paranormal and
Oh
sci-fi.
yeah.
And so, I mean, and some of it is obviously, inauthentic, but I tell you,
Sure. Yes,
people
that's
are
the whole point.
thinking outside the box, and they're thinking positively, I think, and getting help a lot of the time for these issues they have.
Yeah,
So
it's like we just talked about, like the levels and layers, right? And
mhm,
kind of opening your eyes to every crazy thing and the unlearning process. It's
mhm,
it's not overnight, and I've come to so many hardcore conclusions that I knew 100%,
mhm,
that the following month I felt 180 about so
mhm.
many times. And it seems like it takes some of us a lot of those moments to
Well, it
realize the
does.
ping 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 back and forth. It's
It
like,
does.
hey,
I mean, just
center.
think about even the process of reincarnation, and the fact that we incarnate in groups usually, which means we switch roles around with our family and our friends, and and
Interesting.
and we do that until we get it right. And
Hmm.
we are unique in that human beings have a tremendous desire to learn and perfect themselves. That really is a big part of who we are. And when that gets interfered with, it just means that someone has been cut off from their spirituality, from their true identity. They've
Damn
been
right.
cut off through grief or through anger, and just been cut off from that deep connection. And that's the only way that anybody can be separated from source, is if they themselves have brought down that curtain.
That's
And
beautiful.
it can happen through drug use and all those things too, but you know.
Yeah, it can happen from a lot of different angles. I saw a
Mhm.
great image one time. The first image said before spiritual awakening, and it was like a boot on the side of a head. And the guy was like, oh, and the second image said after spiritual awakening, and it showed the full image where the guy's arm was in the boot on his own head.
Oh.
And it's like,
Yeah.
that was perfect.
Isn't it though? And it's even like, holding on to like nasty emotions like
Mm,
anger and
yes.
vindictiveness. And my grandmother used to say, that's like, if you're like that, if you're holding on to all that shit, that's like drinking poison and waiting for the other guy to die. You know, it's
That's perfect. Oh man. Well, we could go on and on, but I'm not going to keep you. And it's late on my end. I got to get to bed soon. And this was an incredible conversation, Lesley. I'm so glad we had the opportunity to sit down. Finally.
Bless your heart. And, I would love to come back and visit you anytime. And if anybody out there is interested a little bit more in my work, I do have a recent book called Intersections, A True Story of Extraterrestrial Contact. And you can get that through Amazon.com, Amazon, wherever you Amazon, it is available. So there you go. Excellent. All right. Thank you so much, buddy.
Hey, do you still do your podcast show, right?
Yes,
okay,
I
good.
still have.
All right.
You've
been on for a long time.
Long time, man. At first, we were Contact Radio, and now we're Contact TV. We do fewer shows, but we do full studio production now. So, we decided to do that. And Contact TV is alive and well, and you can find us on Facebook and YouTube and like that.
All right, great. Well, everybody, I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. Lesley, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. Hope to see you soon. Take care now. Okay. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Deep Share Podcast. If you want to hear more, then hit that subscribe button. Follow me on all the social places. And remember, think for yourself, but don't always believe what you think. Till next time.
Human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together, that's hysteria. Enough, I get the point.
You have meddled with the primal forces of nature. And you will atone.
What do we know? What do we know? If I know what we know, then I can tell you what we know, and if someone else knows, okay? I mean...